We seem to have some.
Yeah, I'm gonna check on that.
But they have their phone on. We're getting some.
I'm gonna check on that just now. Okay. Okay. It's just the iPhone. All right. So let me welcome you to the Real Talk program this evening. We will be discussing a very important subject. But before we get into the program this evening, let me say that our host for the evening will not be with us. Dr. Neff is not feeling very well and she asked to be excused. So we are going to try to do our best in discussing this subject among ourselves, among the panelists, and sharing with you. And we are hoping to have a great time as we discuss this program this evening. Very, very important indeed. And so on the panel this evening is Dr. Bertram Jones. I'm going to ask Mr. Arthur Pierre was with us in the discussion recently. So if he turns on his mic, I would add him to the list here. And hopefully Reverend Roger Samuel is going to join us soon. And we are going to be talking about this subject of borrowing, whether or not it is, whether it's an opportunity, whether it's something that we are talking, we should be contented and we should not borrow, or whether or not we should be engaged at all in borrowing. And if we should, then what precautions should we take and what should we be doing in order to borrow? So we are going to start. So I'm going to ask Brother Pierre and Brother Jones, if you could just give the audience, share with the audience, a little bit about yourself, and then we will jump into the questions as we start to discuss this subject this evening.
Okay, I am an elder, lay elder from my church. Been that way from 1990. I'm very involved in church work. When I'm married with 2 children, 2 adult children, 27 and 30. Well, that's on the religious side. On the employment side, I'm a business owner. I've been so from 1996. I used to work in government and the private sector for about 17 years. And then I became what you call self-employed from 1996. And I like it. I find it to be very rewarding for me. And I try to give God the glory in everything I do.
Amen. Thank you, Brother Jones. Pastor Samuel, you there? You're going to turn on your mic. Are you ready to share with us? Okay, we're not hearing from Pastor Samuel as yet. Brother Pierre, you on also?
Yes, yeah. I am on. Good night. Good night. Good night, everyone. Good night. Name is Arthur Pierre. I'm from Grenada. I currently work at the National Disaster Management Agency, but I have been a teacher for 12 years, responsible for HIV/AIDS response prevention for about 9 years. Thereabout was in the Drug Control Secretariat for another 8 years. So I have been around the track. I do a lot of social work dealing with men who are perpetrators of domestic violence with a local NGO. And I assist in so many various things, volunteer in so many various things. Married with 4 children, Christian, proud of that one because that has kept me out of a lot of hot water. And certainly I'm really, really happy to be along with this family. I call Real Talk family. All right, so that's who I am.
Thank you. And let me say, you're there, invite someone to the program. You're going to be in for a treat this evening. Again, we will invite you to ask your questions, raise your hands, put the questions in the chat. Don't be afraid to give us a thumbs up if you hear something that you like, or a thumbs down you hear something that you don't like, and we will come and ask you about what you don't like if you give us a thumbs down. But we are going to get started. Thank you for joining us this evening, every one of you who are on with us. Thank you for being with us. I am talking to you this evening from Montemorelos in Mexico, and it's a pleasure to be with you. So it's just about 4:45, 4:45, 4:45 here. So it's a pleasure to be with you this evening as we go with Real Talk. As I said, we are missing our host this evening. She is now feeling very well. These things do happen. And so I am going to read the questions that were prepared for the panelists, and we are going to see how best we can. We have the answers, but we're going to do my best here to read them. So the first question that I have for the panelists this evening: should Christians engage in borrowing when the New Testament scriptures teach, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So should Christians be involved in borrowing, or should they engage in a life of contentment, as the scriptures teaches? So, Dr. Jones? Are you muted?
Yes, yes, sorry about that, yes. One moment. Yes, sorry about that, Brick. Yes, it's in connection with the first question.
Yeah.
And that was, again, I'm sure Christians engage in borrowing when the New Testament scriptures teach, keep your lives free from the love of money, etc., etc. But a lot has to do with how we interpret the scripture. A lot has to do with the background of the person who was making the statement and why the person made the statement. And in this one here, when I did my little check, then it says, when Paul says, you know, in Hebrews 13:5, let your conversation be without covetousness. You know, when I check the Greek, it's the word tropos, which means let your way of life be without covetousness, if you want to plug that in. So it's not really telling us, you know, that we shouldn't borrow as such. But what Paul is advising us is that we shouldn't covet. We shouldn't covet what belongs to someone else. As I looked in what do you call it now? A commentary. I read a commentary on the same verse, and it explained to me that it's about not being covetous and not wanting things that people have. And the book did say that if we were like that, then the world would be a much better place. So, you know, it all depends on how we interpret really scripture, and scripture must match scripture. You know, it can't be one place God is saying, you know, don't borrow it, then another place is saying it's all right to borrow. You know, but as far as I can see it, when I read the scripture, Even Jesus himself advocated borrowing. If you go to Matthew, I think it's Matthew 25:5, when the talents were given out, 5, 3, 1, the person with the 1 talent, he didn't expand on it. He didn't invest it. And Jesus told that guy that, look, you could have gone and invested that money with the bankers, meaning that, that Jesus, he has not given anything. The Bible doesn't say anything really against it. Yes, there are texts that would seem to suggest, that one shouldn't borrow. But when you read the Bible and you match, line upon line, precept upon precept, you see it's much different. It's really much different. I mean, there's some text there. I can share them with you. Psalms 37:21, the wicked borroweth and payeth not again, which implies, that God allows borrowing. He allows the Christian to borrow, but you should pay again. And there's another one here, Exodus chapter 22, verse 25. If thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as a usurer. In other words, if you lend, you shouldn't lend on interest. That's how it was in the Old Testament times. So, which means that the concept of borrowing and lending was in vogue. So in short, really, I would believe, as I might understand the scripture, that God does not. There's nothing in the scripture that says that we should not borrow or lend.
Great. So, Brother Pierre, let me come to you, because one of the scriptures that is often put out there to those who, by those who believe that you should live a contented life, is the one that says that the lender is slave to the borrower. I think it's somewhere in Proverbs 90. So that if you borrow, they tell you straight, you become a slave to the lender. So do you think that as Christians, we should be slaves to others by borrowing, or should we remain in that life of contentment? Thank you, Dr. Jones, for your contribution.
Thank you, Pastor Henry.
Well, my response to that is I do believe that there is nothing wrong with borrowing. And I love what Pastor Jones intonated with the issue of covetousness, or being or coveting. As it relates to the issue of being a slave to it, it means that how I view it is that you may have borrowed, and you have borrowed such an amount that you actually you have to work very, very hard to pay it back. Okay. I do believe that if Christians are borrowing money, I do take it, and let me first establish that for you to be borrowing money, it means that you must have an income. I just want to make sure that is clear. So you are working, okay, whether your salary is good, bad, or indifferent, you're working, and you have the intention of borrowing money. One of the things that I believe Christians should do is, one, if you're borrowing money, you are borrowing money for something that is serious, something that you want to make an investment in, and something that would bring returns to you. I think coming out of the parable with the talents, basically what Christ was saying in that particular parable is the fact that you should get some returns on the things that you borrow. You should make an investment in the things that you borrow, and it should not be for something that maybe I like to use the word frivolous. It's not something that is not important. It basically would just take your money and you don't get returns for it. So I do believe that you should borrow, but it must be done with some degree of wisdom, and you should not have to work so very hard to be able to meet the demands or meet your commitments as it relates to paying back. I think too often in the world we borrow things just for the pleasure of the world, okay? Just for things that persons may borrow money just to buy a cell phone or buy a newer model car or something of the sort. when I believe that if we can invest our monies to get some sort of returns, that is one of the reasons why I think we should, as Christians, borrow.
Thank you very much, sir. So let me throw in the piece that I would probably have mentioned as a panelist. The first thing I would say is that when we think about borrowing, that the biggest borrower that is with us today is God. God himself is a borrower. He does not borrow because he is in need, but I think he does this to teach his children, the wisdom in borrowing. And so those of you who are wondering where this crazy pastor comes from, because coming from this guy, I am coming from the scripture, Proverbs chapter 19, verse 17. Whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord. And my understanding, the one who is receiving from the lender is the borrower. And the scripture goes on to say, and he will reward them for what they have done. Proverbs 19:17. So that God borrows and he gives back interest to those from whom he has borrowed. And so I would think that one of the things that when we're thinking about borrowing, I think one of the first person we should be thinking about lending some of our gifts is the one who gave it to us all in the first place. And so being kind to the poor, we are actually making a loan to God, who will repay us. And the way he repays us, I think he teaches us how to borrow from others and how to repay them.
Oh.
All right, so I'm going to pause, and if there are any questions, you can put them in the chat and we will take them. I know Pastor Samuel is logged on, but he is muted. Pastor Samuel, if you're there, could you tell us if you're going to contribute this evening?
Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening.
All right, so he's there. So let me add him here and allow him to add his contribution.
Well, I appreciate so much what was shared, and I like the fact that God sets the standard and he used principle to teach us how to experience increase and how to experience abundance, because God's ultimate plan is for us to increase and have abundance. As a matter of fact, everything God creates has the ability to create, to increase and to multiply over and over. And God knows the way in which we can experience some of those things is by having that idea of borrowing and investing. And I think once we see, based on what was described in the scripture, if God says, you know, thinking about the benefit of the one who's able to borrow and the power that the person who is lending exercise, is indicating how God views us, investing in each other. And to invest in each other, we have to have some element of borrowing. I think, and for that to be achieved, we have to ensure that we're not fearful in those actions, because everything we do is in faith. And if we follow the principle, it's supposed to yield. And I believe God is teaching us, and he's used many examples in the Bible where he gave people stuff to do, even with the talent that was quoted earlier. And I think they probably didn't realize God giving them those gifts was a way of lending them those things. He gave one 5 and he gave one. So it was a way of lending them, or if I should say, they were borrowing without even realizing it. They were given an opportunity to experience what borrowing and lending can do. And then if you follow through on the integrity of that action, the reward that comes. So the servant who invested what was loaned to him, he was able to bless him with more. And the other one who invested, he was able to reward him with more, which shows as we borrow and we pay back with integrity and we respect the principle that exists in that transaction, we will get increase. And the one who did not do anything with it got in trouble because he realized, because whether it's fair or whatever it is that caused him to be apprehensive, he did not follow through, didn't take time to understand what God was teaching. And so he lost out. So I don't want to be that servant who failed to invest. And he says, even if you were fearful to act upon it, at least you could have put it where it could have gained interest. So we understand that alone, that again talks about what borrowing and lending can do if it is done in faith and if it is done with the right understanding of what it yields, what it generates, and what it was meant to accomplish. Because you are providing strength and assistance while you're receiving strength and assistance. Because if you lend, you are empowering others. Or when you borrow, you're empowering yourself.
Yes, sir.
There is an additional point I want to make, and I think it's coming out from what Pastor Roger just said.
A little louder, please, brother.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just another point I want to make, and maybe it comes out from what Pastor Samuel just said. When we look at the God giving the talents, or the master giving the talents, and the person that I think that would have received the 5 talents, the word of God said that he immediately went to invest it. But that just tells me that this particular individual had a purpose and had a plan. So if we are borrowing, there must be a purpose. And if we are borrowing, there must be a plan. You must know exactly what you're doing with the money that you borrow. And if you're investing it, your plan is really and truly to get some returns or get something back from that could benefit your life or benefit others.
Okay, so I haven't seen another question as yet in the chat, but if you're looking at the program from the YouTube channel, you can type your question in the YouTube chat, and we will take it and have the panels respond to the question here. So thanks very much, Jen. Now, the structure of the world economy, when we look at it today, it's so much different to what existed back in Bible times. And it seems to me that it becomes very difficult to get anywhere without some form of interaction in borrowing. And so it seems as though the average Christian at some point in time, that if he wants to improve his or her financial status, that he must use the money, someone else's. So what are the basic guidelines? And I think you would have already started to lay some out already, but what are the basic guidelines that the Christian should adopt before engaging in borrowing? So let me start with Dr. Jones again, and one of the basic guidelines, talk about it, and then probably somebody else can talk about another, and so on and so on. So, you're muted again, Dr. Jones.
I'm sorry. Yeah, one of the basic guidelines is that we need to reckon, as Christians, we need to recognize that God is the ruler of everything. And we're just stewards. We're just here for a time, and God has given us gifts to multiply. Not to multiply only for ourselves, but more so to multiply for his kingdom. So that is one guideline that the Christians must recognize. Also, too, this last one, we got to repair our debts. You know, we shouldn't ever borrow as Christians and get into any kind of investment where we own people and not paying them back. We should always repay our debts that are due to our fellow man. You said only one, right? So I just gave
yes,
two.
Brother Pierre.
We have to know, you know, just basic common sense business. We have to know where how being, well, of course, have a plan, have a purpose, but know exactly how much you are able to borrow, know exactly what is your limit. Now, one of the things that I see very often is the use of credit cards. Now, for me, the credit card is really and truly almost an immediate loan. All right, and we have to be very, very careful when we use credit cards. That we actually repay and don't get further into debt just by the use of the credit card.
Okay, Pastor
One of the
Samuel.
things that one should be able to do, one of the things one should be able to do, really and truly, is when you use your credit card to be able to pay the bill almost immediately, because you will incur additional interest if you prolong that repayment period.
I think we're going to come back to that again also, Brother Pierre, with one of the questions a little later on as to how you actually manage that type of debt. So, Pastor Samuel?
Yes, I believe, some of the things, power is given to us by God to get wealth, to establish his covenant. And that covenant relates to not just advancing human life, but advancing the human family, whether it's in business, it's in education, it's in health. He's given us power. And so I believe the thing we need to consider is opportunities that are created through wealth for development, for advancement, and to also create generational wealth. So generation of our children, so we can establish inheritance. So a lot of those things I think we should have in the back of our mind, are some of the guiding factors as to why, so when we set out to borrow, is with the understanding it creates opportunities for us, it creates opportunity for generations. We're setting up things that advance God's kingdom. So I believe it's also looking at the opportunity it provides, and not just for our own personal satisfaction, but what we can do to improve other people's lives.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we speak little of in the Christian circle is the whole concept of wealth management. And the word wealth, to some people, it carries a connotation that you have to have a lot of money. I reference was already made to the talents. And so the guy with the one talent felt that he had just a little bit and he didn't have as the others. And so he hid what he had. Wealth management is important. So if you only have $10 to your name, that is $10 of wealth. It is more than the guy, it's $10 more than the guy who has nothing. And it's probably $110 more than the guy who has $100,000 in debt and has no asset to support it. So in managing wealth, I think the first area you need to look at is the income, the amount of money that you are taking in. And there is an old biblical principle that was established for us by one of the greatest economists the world has seen, the guy Joseph, who lived in Egypt, the one whom was sold into slavery. And so he had this vision, and that is important. If you are going to manage wealth, you have to have that vision. You have to have a vision as to where you are going and what you want to do with your money. The Bible tells us that Joseph had seen what was going to happen. He had been able to assess the economic situation that was coming upon the nation. And so he prepared himself, he prepared the king. And at the end of 7 years, he had bought all of the properties in Egypt from everybody who owned property. He had bought those properties and had them in the name of the king. And you would think that, that was great. If I have all of this money, people are now my slaves and what have you and so on. Not Joseph. Joseph goes and he gives the people an opportunity to rebuy the property. And these are his words to him. Joseph said to the people, now that I have bought you and your land today for Pharaoh, here is seed for you so you can plant the ground.
You're stuck.
The other four.
Okay.
Hello?
You were stuck.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that's my internet problem in a strange place. The other 4/5 you may keep as seed for the fields and as food for yourselves and your households and your children and your children. Genesis 47, 23 to 24. So let me just put a little, just share a little screen here to give you an idea what the prophet is talking about. All right, so here it is. Joseph is saying now, you have a portion for your taxes, and the tax piece would be the blue piece that is represented here. And then you have this big portion for your consumption, what you may eat, your food, and then the seed that you are going to replant would be your investment. Now, if you make this bigger, it means that you have to eat less. If you make your investment smaller, it means that you are eating more, you see? So that you have to understand the little bit of money that you have after you've paid your taxes, you can do one or two things. You can eat it, and by eating, I don't mean just buying food. I mean the things that are now going to bring a return to the monies that you have. So you spent it on the cinema, you spend it on, you know, the games and all of these other trivial things that you want, clothes and what have you. They're not going to, you can't buy clothes and then sell them back to make money, except you're going into trading. If you are buying clothes or you can sell clothes and you can buy clothes and sell them back if you're into trading. But if you are just buying clothes to wear because you want to change the suit every day to look good and to look nice, then you are cutting down on the amount of money that you have for investment because you have used it in consumption. So you need to look into this area, this little block where, and I hope you're seeing my mouse, where you can decide how much of it we are going to invest and how much we are going to consume, okay? So it is important to understand that very principle. And oftentimes in that area of investment, you do not have enough to do what you want because the vision is big. And that's where you are going to put your investment. And let me say one thing, and let me just put back the, the screen. It is in this portion, when you borrow, you want to increase this portion, okay? So right now I have 100% here, 65, 20, 85, 50, right? So you want to increase this portion. You do not want to cut back on the bright part here because you can't. This is your food, your rent, and all of these different things. You can cut back, but you want to increase this portion. And so oftentimes you borrow. So the proportion now, your income has grown by borrowing, you know, you have more money, but then make sure you put it into investment. And let me say this, very important. What you are giving to the poor or giving back to the Lord, it does not go in this portion here that is for food. That's a portion that is investment. So oftentimes we spend so much eating and we don't think that because, you know, I can't afford to give this person this. I can't afford to do this. Not realizing that they're given to the poor out of this portion of your investment or out of this portion of your income is your investment, because this is the surest part of it. When you give to the poor, when you give to the Lord, this is the piece that is going to increase. And so Paul to the Corinthians, if you give sparingly, if you invest sparingly, you will reap sparingly. But if you give bountifully, then this will grow. And somehow this probably may just get smaller.
Pastor Henry,
yes, Pastor Samuel, go right ahead. Let me stop here.
I mean, this is so inspiring to understand that there is a system set up for us to learn from, because oftentimes we don't believe the Bible catered for all of this. And we look to the master, we only look to the banks and the other people to educate us. And they're the ones who have designed a system to take from us, not knowing that the word has a system to show us how we can invest, we can understand our level of consumption and the taxes, etc. Can we also say that part of our investment is also the value we add to our life? Because the more value we add to our lives, we become more valuable to others. So can we say, therefore, educating ourselves, equipping ourselves, and, you know, sharpening our skills, can we safely say that those things shall also be looked upon as investment? Because if we are skilled, if we are trained, if we're educated in whatever field, that can also bring back an increase, make us more marketable, give us the power to negotiate our worth, and so on. So would you say that that too is a way of investing, part of that percentage of investment?
Let me ask one of the brothers. I would definitely say yes, but I believe one of the other brothers would want to add to that also.
If I may, I believe that is one of the sole purpose of mankind. We we go to school, we study, we go to college, we go to university, we study. And the purpose of it is not necessarily just to fill or get good salaries, but to be able to assist the other person. Whatever field you study, whatever area that you are involved in, is really and truly to serve others. You are a doctor, you're serving people. You are an economist, you're serving people. You are an accountant, you're serving people. You are somebody who does whatever. It is you basically would be serving. You'll be serving others, and the more skilled you are, the more you invest, I believe, in your skills, in the talents that you have, in that God-given talent that you have, that you would have enhanced through education, through learning, is really and truly to be able to give even better service to other individuals. That is just my opinion.
Yes, and in addition to what you gentlemen are saying, I wholeheartedly agree with all the comments. And I also want to just add a little to yours, Pastor Henry, when you mentioned Joseph and the planning, the 7 years planning. And it shows me that as Christians, especially, we need to plan and plan properly. Because sometimes investments may look good on paper, but when you get into it, it is something different. We must plan wisely. Sometimes you might be into an investment that may not have much market life, or it might be on the downside. All that's into planning. Also, too, in planning, we must be careful. We must educate ourselves on interest rates, on credit, the whole system of credit, because credit is very, very broad. And a lot of us, we get into credit arrangements. And then in the midst of the arrangements, we find that that is not really what he really wanted. Because sometimes these things, the terms that are written in the contracts, we don't even look at the contracts really. We just want to get the thing now. And that's understandable. But I think, in short, that we as Christians especially, we need to educate ourselves on credit, who has the best rates, the type of credit facilities that we're getting into, so that as we invest, we plan properly, and we know, we have a good idea of, the income streams as against cost.
Thank you, Pastor Jones, Dr. Jones. You better take this office of this pastor thing, because every time you come on this program, I'm calling you Pastor Jones. So
yeah, that's all right.
We could exchange it. You could take my pastor and give me the doctor.
No problem.
That doesn't improve this. That doesn't change the skills, does it?
Mm-hmm. No,
just the title. So I mean, it's set to support the point. So Pastor Samuel, you have the vision.
Mm-hmm.
Invest in it. So there's nothing wrong. What I'm gathering from you guys, there's nothing wrong in taking a student loan. right? Now, so the next question I have, and I'm not seeing any in the chatters yet, but please put your questions in the chat. We're waiting to hear. But the next question I have is this one. Talk to the, well, it's not so much a question, but yeah, it is. Speak to the young person who is listening tonight, who has never borrowed from a lending institution in his life. What should the young borrower know before approaching the bank or the lending institution? So we have a young person on the line. And if you're a young person out there this evening and you want to let these men know that you want to, you want to hear from them, just put up your thumbs, just put up a thumbs up and say, yeah, that's a question for me. So Pastor Samuel, let me start with you on this one.
I think, you know, like you said earlier, you talked about the master and the servant, and we know there is a system of entrapment, and sometimes because of that, the borrower is enslaved to the lender, and because of that, sometimes we are extra careful and concerned. So we know that there was a system, but I think in us being educated in understanding there's a rat race, and there's an inside and there's an outside, and we have to find a way, how do we work out of that rat race, not to be trapped in it. And so education beyond just school, but probably some understanding of how money works is a good way to help a young person to understand how money works, as opposed to just working for money. So I think that's how the rich seem to survive. They're not just going to school to get education, they get a good grade and get a good job, like we said many times, but they have an understanding how money works. So I think some education as to how money works and what it can achieve and how it's a servant, and it was designed to, you know, create pathways. So I think it's being aware of the working of money and having a vision, like we said before, and an idea of where you are called to function and to flow, because you may just choose a career to get money, and it may not be something that really gives you fulfillment to allow you to be your best version of yourself. So that education of who you are, what you're called to be, and knowing how it works, then you seek to develop your skill so you can match that and you can be in fulfillment of that. So I think not to be trapped in that rat race and to be trapped in that system and be fearful of what, because many times I think we are more fearful and we are more careful than faith. So we exercise more fear than faith. So we need to encourage the younger person that their faith needs to be developed. They need to be grounded in their faith and grounded in their courage. So when they approach things, they're not approaching things out of fear or out of uncertainties, but knowing who they are, how solid they are, and the principles in which they're grounded in, they respond and they make decisions out of that. So they make informed decisions. They're not emotional decisions, not just doing things out of fear, out of what people are saying, but learning how this money works, learning the understanding of the system, because I saw that's how Joseph and Moses beat the system. He grew up in the system, learned the system, and then went back to defeat the system by God's power. So somehow I'm thinking there are ways we could grow and learn from this if we understand how money works, what is our purpose, a sense of vision, and education outside of just the traditional education, one of it to empower ourselves so we can really learn how to decide from that place. I'm not the expert here, so I'm just trying to give my little 2 cents.
Gotcha.
Pastor Pierre, I just want to come in here. Well, what I have found with a lot of young people, because this is a part of my work, I am very much involved with people getting loans. And first thing I'm involved with it at a different level, but I find that sometimes some young folks, the first thing I would ask the young people person is that, do you need that loan? No, sometimes we may see things and we want them, but are we ready for them? Can our income support it? And I think one of the main things that youngsters have to we need to educate our youngsters in is get a loan that's relevant to your salary. Sometimes you may want a good, but it's not necessary. So why put yourself in debt, for a certain number of years? Because, and in terms of borrowing too, we must tell our young folks that they must get into, they must get into the culture of saving, investing. Now, what's investing? Investing is a big word, but if you buy an apple for $10 and you sell the apple for $12, you've gained $2. So investing doesn't have to be stocks and shares, but whatever you can turn your money in. I believe as, young people, we need to teach them, not to spend frivolously. Try to get into things that can turn, that can bring you money, not just things because everybody's getting it, but, develop an attitude where you want to create wealth creation, which means that you have to look around. Because there are always things you can invest in, but you have to find it. So I think, in short, really, our youngsters need to understand credit in terms of if you want it, if you can afford it, and get them into the whole culture of saving and investing.
Well, I just want to echo the very said sentiments, both from Pastor Samuel and Dr. Jones. I come across a number of young persons, and sometimes one of the first things, as soon as they begin to work, that they would really like to have, and trust me, when they explain their desire, you almost feeling sorry for them. One of the first things a number of your young persons would love to have is a motor vehicle. All right, so they might have finished college or university, and they are making a relatively, okay salary, and one of the first things that they go after is vehicle. And you have to almost sit them down and say, look, vehicle, basically, you're losing money. You're just throwing money at something. You have to pay insurance, you have to do maintenance, you may meet in an accident, etc., and you're kind of outlay the reality. So one of the things, you would want to say, well, look, you're very young, put your monies into something, maybe like the purchase of piece of property, piece of land. Of course, that would give, it would appreciate over time, and at the end of whatever, you have something that you own, and if you sell it, you certainly would make some huge profits from it. Okay. So we have to, and I do agree with Dr. Jones, that we have to teach people the issues of money, how to use money. And I think Dr. Samuel said the same thing too, that we have to let our money work for us instead of having to work for our money. So I certainly agree with both points, and I just wanted to kind of give an example to put things in a bit of perspective.
Okay, so I would add this by saying that one of the first things you need to understand as a young person, when you go to a lending institution today, the first thing they're looking for is your credit rating. You have never borrowed before, but they want to see exactly how much you have borrowed and what you have paid back. So you're at a disadvantage to getting a loan for the first time. And how do you beat that? Well, this is how you beat it. So if you're 15 years of age and you're thinking, by the time I get to 20, I want a loan because I need to do certain things. I have a plan to do certain things by the time I'm 20. And you have a stipend that comes from your parents because you're in secondary school or what have you. If it's $10 per week, $2.50 per day from the 5 days, and you can put that aside, every month you are going to have $40 thereabout. You put it in the bank, and you do that religiously every month without breaking it. that in a sense is developing a credit rating for you, because you are proven to the bank that you can set aside monies systematically over a period of time. So guess what? You have now at the end of 10 years, 5 years, you $2,000, almost $3,000 in the bank from your little $10 a week savings. Your $3,000 in the bank. You can walk into the bank and say, listen, I want a loan for $5,000 or $3,000 or $5,000. I'm going to pay you back over 10 years. And the bank say, well, all right, I'm going to make some interest from you. You seem to be a steady person who have been saving consistently. And instead of putting the savings there, you're going to have the savings that you had. Just in case you don't pay me back, I can take money from it to pay back myself. And at the same time, I am going to trust you. I am going to entrust you with that $3,000 or $5,000 that you are going to borrow. But remember what I said earlier, you're not going to borrow that money to take a trip as a young person to go and see a friend in some other country, as the case may be. You have a plan, you're going to use that $5,000 to make at least another $2,000 or $3,000 in a few period of, a few months. So you know how you're going to use it. You have a plan as to how you are going to use it. And so you set out to bring to fruition the plan now in order to make the money that you want to make. So you may not be successful in making all that you had in mind, because I have proven that my little savings that I started out with, what I had in mind to make with the little investment, it didn't work out the way that I had hoped, but you don't give up, you stick with it. And as you continue in that particular path of borrowing and repaying, mind you, borrow, repay, don't, as fast as you can repay, do it, so that if you get an extra $10 in the week, pay the bank. If they tell you $20 a week to repay, $10 a week to repay, then and you get an extra $10, repay them $20. Nothing is wrong with that. Repay them. The earlier you finish, you are going to realize that the bank trusts you, and you would have developed a credit rating that another bank could say, yes, we can trust this person for this particular amount of money. Okay, so it starts with saving as a young person. It starts with savings, and not just savings when you get a large sum of money and put it in the bank. I want to spell that out. Like you somebody give you for your birthday and you get $500 or 500 US, and so you go on and deposit in the bank, and you will make another deposit until next year birthday when you get another 500. The bank is not interested in that. The bank wants to see the consistent saving over a period of time, because when they give you a loan, they want to see your consistency in repaying over a period of time. So I think we had a question in the chat or a comment in the chat. Let me take that, and then we're going to go to the next question. So somebody said, Pastor Griffith, good point. If we want things, we must, where is it go to now? We must save towards it. I have heard that something have its advantage. Is that true? That something, Pastor Griffith, if you could just tell us what is that? Somehow I missed.
That 100% have its disadvantage. Is that true?
Yeah, good night. I'm actually sorry. I missed the word. Good night. The idea is that we have established that it's important to save. I've always said that if you don't save, you will never own anything. That's my version. But I realize that we live in an environment that people are offering you a 100% loan. And I'm getting the idea that that might have some disadvantages. And perhaps you guys can help me to find out whether, in your opinion, there are any advantages in 100% loans, especially to young people.
Well, the truth is, let me say, anytime you get free money or cheap money easy, just understand that that is the money that comes with a lot of pain. You could go to the loan shark, right, and ask him for $20,000 borrow. He's going to give you, and you know who the loan shark is, the guy who is by the side of the road and willing to give you the money and so on. He is going to give you the money, and he is going to tell you, you want $100,000 borrow, but you have to pay me back $150,000 within a particular period of time. Now, you can come up with the money. He ain't going to call the police for you. He's going to call one of his policemen to teach you a lesson to pay him back on time. Now, no young person should get involved in that kind of a borrowing. No Christian young person should ever get involved in that sort of a borrowing. Every time you borrow, I think you should borrow from a lending institution. And the lending institution do not throw money in your hand. They're going to ask you some hard questions. Don't get that idea that lending institution want to give you their money. They want to make money from you. And so they want to make sure that when they give you the money, that they can get it back, right? And so oftentimes they're asking you, if you're going to take this, what are we going to hold as collateral, just in case you cannot pay, so we can sell it and get back our money.
Pastor Andy, there's another something in the chat. It says sometimes the vehicle comes before the house.
Yes.
And then it says savings should be encouraged from as early as primary school, where organizations such as Junior Corporation helps, also insurance agents, etc. Yeah, that came from Trudy Coffee.
Just before we answer that question, if I may, what I want to emphasize there is that I have a concern that, because I think we all agree we must discipline ourselves to save. And if you cannot discipline yourself to save, how are you going to discipline yourself to pay? That is one. Now, when you know that you can just go into a bank or the institution and get 100% loan, do you understand how much your ultimate cost is going to be? That's one, technically speaking. In addition to that, you have not, in that case, done any preparation at all to help yourself along the path. Why should I want to loan you money at easy rates when you have not demonstrated the capacity? I think.
Let me just clarify with the 100% loan you're mentioning. You're saying that if a person wants $1,000, that they can go to the bank and get $1,000. That's the 100%. That's how you're
yes. Some I've heard about loans where we just pay a job letter, etc. We can give you 100%. You don't have to. Some people say you got to pay on 10%. Like if you buy a percent land, you put up the first 10%.
Yeah.
There's some loans that you have to put up X amount and then we come in with the rest. But then others come and say,
no. What people don't understand, that's advertisement gimmicks. When you get and sit down with the banking of the loans officer at the bank, he wants every single cent to be to ensure that he can get back his money, especially if you do not have a credit rating. The credit rating is for that kind of a loan where a person gets 100%. Is for the person who has been borrowing from the bank and has been repaying. And so the person has built a trust with the institution. And so the bank is willing to put more money on them. But you just walk off the street, you don't have anything. And you walk into the bank and tell them you want $10,000. Too bad. You're not going to get a $10,000 like that at all. You understand? So I have proven that over the years. There was a time when I used to have problems to get loan, and the last loan, not the last, but one of the last loans that I took in, well, the last one that I took into Trinidad and Tobago, the guy brought the papers for me to sign at my house to get $250,000.
Yeah, Pastor,
You understand what I'm saying?
I take your point. But the truth of the thing, the reality is, though, I understand what Brother Pastor Griffith is saying as well, too. That credit today, this is how you interpret it. Credit today is a lot easier to get. Once you qualify, then years, then years of work.
Yeah.
And these, once you qualify, you can get loans. You can get many loans once you qualify. Yeah. And that is the problem, you see. That's the problem. So we found out that people get themselves in a lot of debt and then struggle after. But I believe that as a people, we need to observe others and we need to sacrifice. Sometimes we may believe that the two most expensive items in a lifetime basically average is your house and that automobile transportation. Now, yes, you need a house, but you don't really necessarily at your stage now when you're starting need a big house.
That's right.
You don't necessarily need a Rover or whatever for a car. So the point I'm getting at is that we have to learn to sacrifice. If we sacrifice, then we can save. But if we jump into big loans, then we have a problem, because it means that our earning years when we are young, we're not able to save. But then there's another twist to it. You can borrow if you have another income stream coming in. But if you're just dependent on a salary, even if it's a big salary, because with a bigger salary, you borrow more money. If you don't have an income stream coming in other than the one you get, and then you can, if anything should happen, you can find yourself in problems. So you must think like other people and think more than just the, the salary that you're getting, and think to, get income by other means, legal means, obviously.
So I believe that's why we're here to educate them and encourage them to put priorities and to understand where they can start, so they know, don't just follow everybody else and just do what makes you look good and what makes you look famous. But and so we are here to as that community of support, to encourage them and to teach them. The right way to go about is this and that, and be resourceful and not just look for resources. Be resourceful, and so be able to think and find ways of getting things done. Because sometimes people need to understand, don't just look everywhere for ideas, but you must also generate ideas, and you must become very resourceful, because sometimes people are only looking for resources but not knowing if they are not resourceful in themselves. Giving them resources wouldn't really help. So I think it's all the education and the empowerment that like such as this program is doing, to encourage them. Yes, be careful, but at the same time be empowered. Yes, be aware, but don't be scared. Yes, these are some of the things that exist, but plan properly. Yes, they can entrap you, but at the same time, don't let that be a deterrent. Educate, know how the system works, but then, start small, or however it is, be guided, look for people who can coach you and mentor you so you can have a better understanding. So we really encourage them and not really scare them, so they will know that it is possible. You can be young, you can achieve, you can accomplish, but you need guidance. Seek guidance from those who have a better knowledge. Seek guidance, so you can be guided through this process and understand how it works, and encourage them to think and be innovative and be resourceful. And because sometimes they have to know, you have to find ways, like was mentioned, other streams of income, the other things you can do, the other talents that you have, capitalize. And don't just go after the bright lights, and don't just go after what is famous, and don't just let be educated by television and just by YouTube and what people are doing, but really get a sense of what you were designed to be, what God called you to be, and how you can excel, and how can you be empowered. So I think some of those things we are doing here to encourage them to understand that it is possible, but just seek the right type of guidance. And many of you here have that wealth of experience, that if many of our young people call upon you, you can share with them your experience. So I think they should capitalize on the wisdom that you carry and seek out your wisdom. And that's a good way for them to start and know being content. It shouldn't just be where you are. Being content should be in the ability to improve. That is where your contentment should be. Not just be content where you are and then somehow magically, no. Be content in the ability to improve and to keep advancing and to keep adding value, and seek education, sit in the right counsel around the right people, learn from those who are going ahead of you, ask questions, find out how it, And I think they can be encouraged to make better decisions, and they can have a positive, productive lives, and they will not repeat some of the mistakes of parents or family, and they can make it good because we are here to guide them. And not to scare them, but we're here to guide them.
I think
let me add.
you
Go ahead,
you just mentioned the antidote to the point I was going to make. I think Pastor Griffith earlier talked about the 100% loan, but there are some quick loan institutions that it will be able to or can give you loans. It may not be large amounts, but short, small loans, right? They give you it. You know, you're coming with a job letter or a salary slip or something. You know, just to indicate that you are making money. All right, and just as Dr. Jones said that you're qualified, right? But the interest rates, the rate of interest is much higher than those of the bank. Right. And people sort of get caught up with that. Now, one of the things that, and I love what Pastor Samuel said. All that he said is basically the antidote to all of this. A lot of times, young persons are captivated by all the offerings of the world, and they can go to these institutions and get a quick loan within less than an hour. They walk out with the money. All right, and actually it is a trap, because you find yourself having to pay back large interest rate, and you sometimes end up in a cycle, because they will target you again. They would call on you again. They would send you notes again when it's coming very, very close for you to finish paying off those loans. So I just wanted to say that, and the advice that Pastor Samuel gave, I think, dealt very, 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 very good with what I just said.
Yeah, and so my little addition to that is that if that quick loan is going to be used for a medical operation, is an investment in a life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And of course, if that quick loan that I'm going to pay the high interest rate on is going to be invested in something that I know the returns to me is going to be higher. Mm-hmm. It is an invest. It is it's an opportunity to do what I want to. But if that quick loan is going to leave me having to cut my investment because it has become consumption, so the amount that I'm investing is less. Or in other words, I am paying it back, but I am using my offerings, and I'm using the little bit that I will give to the poor to pay it back, then I'm robbing myself. And to the other extent, when you go to the lending institution and they tell you, here is a loan, it's only 4% interest. It's very small. You're going to buy your house, but we are going to give you it for 30 years. Check it out carefully, because most times you're going to be paying 100% in interest on the mortgage. Okay, so you need to check it out, and you need to, and let me tell you, I learned, one of the loans that I took as a mortgage when dealing with the company, I got my retirement salary, and so I went in a few days before to pay off the balance that I had on the loan, and they said, Mr. Henry, this thing is now going to, you're going to have to pay a lot more interest, because you need to wait another few more days, and I forget how many days the lady told me, to avoid the extra interest I had to pay if I paid it off before. I said, what? So I said, well, all right, you all don't need the money. I could hold on to it. You all pay me some interest until the time is up. And when the time is up, I will pay it off. So that there are some loans, and I couldn't remember reading that in the agreement, where if I paid off under 10 years, that I had to pay a certain amount of interest in order to come out of the mortgage. And that's how they're structured, you see. So you have to make sure you want to get into borrowing. You have to understand all of those things as a young person before you start to borrow. But I say, don't even question those guys who are lending money by the side of the road. Don't even figure out or go on YouTube to figure out how they work it. Just don't do it. They're not safe. Okay, so we had two other statements here. Let's take them and then we're gonna go to the next question. Sometimes the vehicle comes before the home. It depends. It depends. Some people say no, the home should come first before the vehicle. I say so too, but it depends. If that vehicle is going to have to, you know, where you live and all of these different things, you need that transportation to get the family to work and what have you, then, and to get to the evening classes, to get your education, because transport, those kind of things, yes. And then the next question says, savings should be encouraged from earliest primary school, where organizations such as Junior Corporation helps also insurance agents. Yes, I quite agree. And speak to your insurance agent as a form of saving for your children from early also. They sometimes have very good programs that can assist. All right, so we are going to the next question. And the next question here, since borrowing should be centered around investment, I think we have said that, what are some of the principles or values by which the Christian borrower should adopt in investing and borrowing? So we are talking two things there. What are some of the values that we should use when we are borrowing, and some that when we are investment? Whoever has it first could start. I'm not calling anyone. So who wants to go first? Then go right ahead and start with three panelists. Who's going first? I gotta call one. All right, Dr. Jones, you go right ahead.
Some of the principles of investment.
Yeah.
As a Christian. Well, we do things from a spiritual background, so everything we do, God should be first. We got to put everything to Him first. No. Secondly, we got to, in terms of investing, we have to really analyze that investment. Do you know there's some investments that look good on the outside when you're outside, but when you get into it, it's something different. Now, let me just say here, let me give an example, because things are a lot easier understood when you give examples. A young man came to me the other day who works, and it was in his office, and he was asking me for some advice about investing. And he mentioned, I never said, he mentioned about hired cars. If you should get into hired cars, he probably has a little cash. And with my little experience with that business, I told him, well, yeah, but people are still in it from time immemorial, but it's not an investment that I will get into, because it's risky, and it's kind of it's not certain. It's very, very, and a lot of people have gone into it and left, including myself, because it's not really the average type of investment that it may look good on the outside, you know? So in short, what I'm saying is that you have to analyze carefully the investment that you are getting into. If you're borrowing money, you have to look around to see who understand the credit system. Know about, and then notice someone mentioned it there in the chat about reducing balance and compound interest. Who charges reducing balance on the reducing balance? Who charges compound interest? You know, something because we can get the money quickly. Then we realize after, look, well, I could have got it at a lower rate if I had gone to such a place. So check your, and as you said, Pastor, you know, that you didn't realize that you had to pay a penalty if you repay the mortgage before. And a lot of people don't know that. Most financial institutions are like that. You know, so these things we have to check carefully. You know, the type of investment we're getting into, if it's really an investment that we'd want to get into, if we can afford the investment. And, you know, again, the investments that even if it falls, you yourself wouldn't fall. You know, so just be careful with your investments, careful with the people who will lend you credit, you know, and do your thing wisely. And also ask for professional advice where it's necessary.
Okay. Pierre?
I just want to add, one of the things that seem to be trending a lot these days is a lot of scams. I would be remiss if I don't talk about it, because sometimes they present some outcomes that is too good to be true, and more often than not, it is that. We have a lot of scams on all sort of social media, and you know, they may send you all kind of information. So really and truly checking out your investment is critical. Now, one of the other things again is that the Caribbean have been hit by some very legitimate companies going under, and persons would have done a lot of investment in some of these insurance companies or interest companies and so forth, and persons would have lost quite a lot of money. So again, it is very, very critical that we do the due diligence to find out about some of these investments that persons may be attracted to. All right, and I always believe in, you know, praying about your investments, knowing exactly what you're actually getting into. And really and truly, I have faith in the guidance that God gives you.
Okay, Pastor Samuel.
So yes. I think be faithful in a few. Those are the principles that I can think about, being faithful with a few things so you can be trusted with more. And I think we should invest in what we understand. We should honor God and serve others. I think those are some of the things we should walk in as we seek to be integral and walk in integrity. I think some of those things we should really develop in ourselves. So we, in honoring God, we also respect and honor people and serve people. And I think things like, you know, understanding what we should invest in, and you know, the whole concept of the seed, and being faithful in the few things, so you can become a ruler in the bigger things. So I think those basic principles are some of the things we should pay attention to. Yeah.
Pastor, before you go on, Pastor Henry, just want to make a supporting statement with Pastors Pierre and Samuel, you know, in being careful with what you're getting into, because some things look so beautiful on the outside, you know, but if it's too good to believe, usually it may not be any good. I remember many years ago when I first got into business, important business that is, I saw an advertisement in the paper and I said, wow, I'm going to get into this. I'm going to be the first man. I sent the money overseas. And that was about 20-some-odd years ago. I maxed up all of my credit cards, every one of them to the max. And that was 1996, I think it was, or 1997. I have not seen those goods yet. I'm still looking for them. So this, you know, there are a lot of scams, as you said, Pastor Pierre, there are a lot of scammers out there, you know, and one has to do what the lawyers would say, I think, due diligence. You better carefully check. If not, you can be scammed out of a lot of money. And with the onset of social media, it's easy for these people to get around. So, you know, we have to be very careful with it. And don't forget, we are just stewards of the Lord's goods. What we have, all of it belongs to the Lord. So he wants us, you know, to spend wisely for his kingdom.
Yeah. The principle that I think that, or the scriptural principle that I think should always be applied is that dishonest money will dwindle away. Mm-hmm. But whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. And I think that is one of the principles that the Christian should put in front of it. Pastor Samuel and I know of a particular gentleman who was told that one of his successors or one of his predecessors died in Africa and left him this big set of money, and that this money was going to come to him and what have you and so on. I got involved because at the time I worked at the embassy, and this person wanted me to figure out whether or not they had already sent the money to wherever, and now the check was in the mail, and they sent him a copy of the check. And so here was a check, I think was $1 million, I can't remember how many dollars, with one signature on it. And I said, boy, how could we as Christians be so crazy? And I had to ask questions, because working there, I didn't want myself to be go searching on the people's computer looking for a company that was a bad company, bad listed, and then next thing you know, they're tying me up with this company and all kind of a thing. I lose my job and lose everything that the Lord had given to me. So, but this is a Christian person who was willing to take hard-earned money and give it to someone else, thinking that and hoping that they were going to get this big increase. So one of my questions, do you know anybody in Africa that died? No, well, they said that the person died and they leave the money for me. Well, you know, don't bother with those emails. You read them and you notice them. The person could hardly spell, they could hardly write English properly, but the devil give them enough wisdom. And too badly, if we as Christians take what God has given to us and hand it over to the devil. And somebody mentioned honesty, and that is so important. I think one of the other principles with dealing with money is being trustworthy, right? Jesus said in Luke 16:11, if then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust to you the true riches? So that one of the things that we as Christians have to do is to, whatever comes into our hand, we have to recognize that it comes from God. It's not that my hands work for it and I made it. It is God who provided it, and we spend it and we use it as though we are using our Father's money, accountable for it. We are good stewards of it. And so I would say that ensure that you be honest, you pay back on time when you are called to borrow, whatever you are asked to repay. And if you ever get into the position as a lender where you have become wealthy and you're investing and you have become a lender, you know, even when you are lending to the Lord, the Bible says when you lend, you don't ask for it again. Right, so I think that is somewhere in Luke chapter 6, somewhere down to the end of the chapter. But you lend, and even though, and Jesus said, if you lend to your enemies, so that here is one of the principles. Some of us as Christians, we don't understand that, because we think that when what God gives us, it is to hold on to, it is to bless other Christians, but our enemies, we can't treat our enemies to a plate of food because they are our enemies. Well, read Psalm 23. When God prepares a table for us, he does it in the presence of our enemies. And if you follow the scripture and understand the context in which the scripture is written, it doesn't mean when God prepares the table for you, it doesn't mean that you're going to eat at somebody's table. It means that God has given you the whole table of food, and you're able to bring your enemies and put them there to sit down and say, enjoy yourself. All right, so that you'll be free in dealing with your enemies. And if that's the somewhat the landmark, for your enemies, then I believe that the bar is a lot higher for your friends and your brothers. So be honest, and I think somebody meant, well, Pastor Griffith said in the chat, principles, do the best to honor your loan agreement. Yes, and that's what we're talking about. Honesty, be honest and have reasonable markup. You can steal in more way than one, and that's true. So you don't want to rob God, and you don't want to rob others when you are on the lending end, all right? Final question I think I have here, and that's the one on credit cards. So the credit card is a form of borrowing. What do you say to those who are encouraged, or shouldn't probably even use the word encouraged, but well, yes, you are encouraged by the bank or the merchant to take a credit card. And what recommendations do you have for card holders? Because I realize that once the bank realizes that you are good for money, they're going to throw a credit card at you. I have a credit card and I didn't ask for it. We were dealing with the bank. We were borrowed money. We were borrowing money at the time to build our house. And the bank gave me a credit card and they put 25,000 US dollars on it. And I don't spend I think I must be spend $1,000 or $2,000 for the most every month, but I don't go over my income. But I keep it. I haven't given it up because if I get one for $5,000, it's going to be the same amount that I have, annual fee that I have to pay every month. So if you leave it for $50,000, 25,000 US, I don't know when I would have need for that money. Probably when I'm going to die, I would just spend it on my coffin. I go crazy sometimes, right? Well, I can't take it to heaven with me, can I?
And if you do spend on your coffin and you don't repay, the insurance might be able to handle that because but the credit card is a serious thing. I know it is easy access to a loan as far as I'm concerned. One of the things one of my colleagues who are in cybersecurity would say is that it is good for you to use it. For example, if you're purchasing goods online, instead of using a debit card, right? Because it has that security feature. If you lose your items through shipping, you can reclaim it through insurance and all that. So it has its purpose, but it also can, for persons who are not disciplined, for persons who, just like to spend or like to shop, it can have some negative repercussions as it relates to how you pay back. One of the other things too is that you should avoid high interest and try to pay back in time. So I would rest any my comments as it relates to credit card and give way.
I would like to say that if you don't need a credit card, don't use it. Because the interest rate on credit cards are so high when you look at it. Any outstanding amount at the end of the month, and if it continues, that interest rate grows, I can't remember the word, but extremely high. That's the kind, that's what they call, well, I don't want to say that, but avoid credit card debt wherever you can. That's not, for some people, they need to have a credit card. Yes, it's an easy way of ordering goods online. If you're overseas, easy way of payment. But if you don't need them, get rid of them. Just take your citizens and just cut them up. Because that kind of, if you're going to, borrow serious money on credit cards, you have to pay back serious interest. Personally, I only use a credit card, and this is the advice I've read in books. If you're going to take credit card debt, if you're going to draw down, make sure you can pay back as quickly as possible, because the interest rate is too high. But there are times when credit cards are very handy, especially if you're investing, and you can get the instant cash, send it out. But then if you can, make sure you pay back, if not all, the most as possible, as much as possible, because credit card debt is no easy debt. There are thousands of people, probably millions of people out there who will tell you, who are suffering because of credit card debt. It's easy, instant money, but then it comes to paying back time, could be another matter. So if you can avoid a credit card, avoid it. A lot of financial management gurus will tell you this. If you can, avoid it and just go the traditional route.
Gentlemen?
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. I agree 100%. I mean, I have one, and I understand the power it carries and the access it gives you. For knowing when to use it.
Yeah.
for that. So, yeah. So management helps you to know how to use it to your advantage and not have them use you to their advantage. Yeah. That's it from, yeah.
Brother Pierre? Gonna have the closing remarks and wrap up just now.
Well, I think I said my bit on the credit card, and I
Credit
do
card, okay, good.
I do agree with Dr. Jones and Pastor Samuel on the issue of credit cards. I don't
June
have
the
one.
16th is what day?
I don't have one. I
I
think
have
my
a
wife
course
is
study. It's all right, I'll look in.
my wife is the one who has a credit card, and you know, I would use she would do the purchases if we have to, and certainly she's a strict individual when it comes to payback, so I don't get away with it. But it has its use, right? And it gives you some spending power, but we have to be very, 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 very careful when we have a credit card.
So my closing point on that is that credit card is helpful, beneficial if you know how to use it, and make sure that you understand all the rules about the credit card. I have 3 of them. One that I would use in Barbados when I'm there, one I'm using Trinidad when I'm in Trinidad, and one that I use internationally when I travel. So they're good. So here are the basic rules that I have learned with all of them. Let me use the one in Trinidad. I use that probably more often than other. But the 21st is the cutoff date for the credit bill. And so if I have a bill that is due on the 21st of April, I pay that bill by the 9th of May. Everything that it says on the bill. Now, from the 21st of May to the 20th, or from the 22nd of May to the 21st of June, I can spend from my credit card without going into my savings account or my checking account. You see, so I have monies that I can spend. I can buy anything that I want. But one of the things I make sure when the 9th, so it goes until the 21st of the next month, 21st of June, I know that's the cutoff date. That's when they're going to print the bill for me to pay. And so I make sure that in my checking account or my savings account, I have that money that I have already spent. So when the time comes, I spend that money, I pay that money upfront, every cent. I made a mistake one time and missed the amount that I was supposed to pay. 10 cents, 10 cents, 10 cents, TT dollars. Understand? And they charged me the full amount of the interest on the credit card for that month, the full amount, because I did not pay the full amount. So remember, if you're not sure whether it's 10 cents or 20 cents, round it off and pay the whole, you know, something extra. It will go over to the credit for the next month. But just make sure you pay the full balance. I love the one from Trinidad because they give me back points in dollars, in TT dollars, as I spend. And so I think it's like a 0.5%, 0.05% of whatever I spend. I get it back. So for every dollar, TT dollar that I spend, I get back like, multiply that by 0.05, half a cent. So I spend $10, I get back, I spend $10, I get back 1 cent. But you spend a lot of money. So at the end of it, it adds up. Every year, they charge me a fee of $625 on my credit card. But because I spend and spend and spend on my credit card, the amount that they charge me is always less than the amount that I get back. So I get free credit. I don't have to pay interest. And I don't have to pay for the credit card. because it comes back in what I purchased. All right, so use the card wisely if you have it. And as I said, if you have a good credit, you go into the bank, especially if you're taking a loan to build a house or anything like that. To build, not if you're just buying somebody's house, but if you're taking a loan to build, ask for the credit card and follow the principles that I just shared. Make sure the credit card gives you back point, because the materials for building a house is a lot of money. And when you're getting back points on that, and you're able to spend in advance, and you can take their own money that they give you to build the house to pay the credit card, you're all around the winner. All right, so borrowing makes sense to me. And I encourage you to borrow, and make sure you borrow and pay back like a Christian. Reverend, your final words.
I will go first, since I'm the least learned in this area. But I want to encourage our listeners, as I encourage myself, to continue to be grounded in the principles of God's word, and continue to be informed and become resourceful, so you can really learn how to think and how to get things done. Really, really educate yourself and add value to who you are, so you become more valuable and you can understand whatever God has in store for you through your understanding of investment and borrowing. It can work for you and not work against you. So I encourage you to seek out counsel and look for those who went ahead of you, who understand the principles, learn from them, and make informed decisions.
I would go follow. Pastor Samuel, so that he's the least of the apostles. You really don't know. Nonetheless, we ought to, as Christians, be able to manage our monies well, manage the wealth that God has given us access to. And in doing so, teach our children, teach our younger ones to save, to prioritize, to plan, and to have purpose in our lives. And by doing so, we are able to manage the blessings that God has given us. As we adults get older and we become wiser, it is very important for us to pass on some of that wisdom to our children and to a number of our young people who will need to carry some of these godly principles and principles of money management, so that they can have relatively good lives as it relates to the issues of money. Okay. So again, we also, and I would just want to echo that sentiment, we must follow the principles of the Bible, which trust me, have not led me wrong in my years, has not led me wrong. All right, so you follow God's principles and be wise, learn from the world, because they have things to teach financially, and do the best that you can in terms of management of the wealth of God. Bless you.
I agree with you, both of you. We follow God's principles because we recognize that we're just here for a short time, and what we have, nothing belongs to us. We came with nothing and we go back with nothing. But the topic here, borrowing, contentment or improvement. I believe if you're contented with your status of life, that's fine. You don't necessarily have to be one who will go there and, be an investor. You don't necessarily have to do that. If you are contented, that's fine. That's between you and your God. But if you want to improve yourself, if you want to raise your social standing, but then you have to invest. Therefore, if you're going to invest, you have to do it wisely. You have to read, you have to observe, be careful with the type of debt you're getting into. learn the market. Nothing wrong with that. You know, God He's asked us, you know, to improve ourselves. You know, but everything, I believe that when it's all said and done, it's about glorifying God. It's about giving back to God, being obedient to Him, being a faithful steward when it's all said and done, and not be one who, you know, has been captivated by the love of money. You know, the love of money is the root of all evil. I mean, money is good in itself, but when it comes to loving money, you know, all you're thinking about is money. That's another matter. That's not for the Christian. Yes, but nothing wrong in increasing your talents, nothing wrong in investing, but do all for the glory of God.
Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you so much, audience. I hope the program was meaningful and that it encouraged you. And we are going to see you making some decisions either to improve yourself through investment and making wise investments, or learning that contented life, living that contented life. Your choice, but remember, be wise. God, the gifts that God give you, the resources that you have, they've been given by God, and we are called to be stewards of all of His graces. And so make sure you use them wisely. And so when we have done so, we can hear Him say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That should be our purpose for using wealth, that He says to us, "You have done well with what I give to you." Thank you again, and the Lord bless you. Our program next week, next 2 weeks, which would be on the 27th, teaching your children to manage wealth. And so if you're a parent, you want to be here because you want to help your children to manage wealth. And if you have children, you want the children to be here also, so that they would learn to manage wealth. And I know as a parent, sometimes you are trying to enforce certain principles, and the children are learning from some of the household. They're learning from what they hear other children say in school. And so here is a good opportunity to help us, or where we try to help you to tell the children what they need to do and what they need to learn. And so have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, and the Lord bless you richly. Good night.
Good night, Pastor Henry.
Good night. Good night.
Sabola.
Sister Bola, how are you?
I'm well. I'm well.
Oh my goodness, so nice hearing your voice.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
thank you very much. I did receive your gift. I thank you very much. You're son enough to drop it for me.
Okay, I'm glad you got it. Good.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yes. No problem at all. Good
program tonight. Good program.
Yes, we can't wait to have you back on. So anytime you're free, just let us know, please. Let's fit you in.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, nice to see you. Nice to hear you.
Yes, you remember Seneca, right? My wife's sister.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, she was on the program. I think you were on with her. She's the one who lived in Boston. Well, we are all down in Mexico at the University Montemorales. I think you know where that is and what it is.
Montemorelos.
Yeah, so she's down here to receive her PhD.
Okay, great. Well, give her my congratulations.
Yeah, so we are celebrating with her this weekend.
Yes. Well, I celebrate with her as well.
Good.
Yes. All right. Well, you take care.
Don't forget to pick up the live.
Yes.